Hello, this is Rekha Kurup, and today I'm here to speak with you about trauma. What is trauma? I'm not a trauma expert, but over the last couple of years, I have been studying trauma learning through workshops, through books, through seminars from experts like Dr. Gabor Mate, Peter Levine, Stephen Porges, Basil van der Kolk, Dan Siegel, Thomas Hubel, Franz Rupert, Bert Hellinger. I mean, in so many ways, I have been exploring the breadth and depth and scope of trauma and how it impacts our life, my life, and the life of those around me, how it hinders our ability to experience safety and connection in very normal circumstances. So, what is trauma? One of the most important things to realize is that trauma is not an event. Yeah, many times an event is traumatic, but it may or may not cause trauma. Yeah. And it is not, so trauma is not something that happened to us. So it's not an event. And so what's a traumatic event? So I love this definition of a traumatic event. Too much, too fast, too soon. Yeah? When something happens in our life which overwhelms our entire body system, the feelings, the body, the emotions, our cognition, our ability, our ability to think, everything gets compromised. We feel overwhelmed for it. We are not ready for it. We are not prepared for it. Yeah. And it happens too fast. It happens so fast that we do not even have a moment to respond, to understand it. And it's too soon. Yeah. And before we could even comprehend, it's either over or it happens again. So something like that, is traumatic. And if there is trauma in a nervous system, so there are two angles to this: too much, too fast, too soon. It may or may not cause trauma. Or if there is trauma in our nervous system, we might be in this too much, too fast, too soon, lot of times in a day, in a week, in a month, in different situations. When you look around, everybody is fine, but for me, it hits like, whoa, I can't, my brain, I can't think, I need time. So that's when you also realize that, whoa, there's something about my nervous system which perceives this as very overwhelming. While I don't see others that way, they are able to, navigate very normally, but I am not. So even then, you might have insights into trauma being in your nervous system. So not just because, any stressful event usually is too much, too fast, too soon, right? It causes stress in our nervous system. It is traumatic. But then two people in the same situation, one might emerge out of it and not have trauma, and another person might have trauma from that event, which stays in the nervous system and then activates and arouses the person's responses in the world based on this particular event. So trauma, and sometimes it happens so fast. So what causes trauma? So I love this. I'm going to give you two definitions of trauma, one by Dr. Gabor Mate and one by Dr. Peter Levine. The one by Gabor Mate is that trauma is not what happens to you. Trauma is what happened to you. Yeah. And and what happens inside of you. So trauma is what happens inside of you as a result of what happened to you. Yeah, so there's a new book by Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey called What Happened to You. So that is actually going there, you know. So that's one quote. And the other quote by Peter Levine is the key. I feel it's the core of trauma. It is trauma is anything that our system cannot handle or process. It is not what happens to us, but what we hold inside in the absence of an empathetic witness. So I think this is the most key, an empathetic witness. Even if an event is too much, too fast, too soon, yeah, it is stressful, catastrophic. But if you have the time, if your body mind system has the time to process it, release it in the presence of an empathetic listener or someone who holds space for you, who sees you, who acknowledges you, yeah, who doesn't judge you, who makes you feel safe and say, it's okay, what's going on? Yeah, just, I'm here. Then, even the most catastrophic event need not cause trauma in our nervous system. But most people in our life, we all have those moments in our childhood, even some adult situations, where something happened so fast. Like if you see, there was this whole cycle in Silicon Valley when people were let go like that. They wouldn't even know that they are being let go. So too much, too fast, too soon. That can cause trauma in your nervous system. And if you don't have someone to talk about it, someone doesn't hold space for you, and you hold it all in, it can cause trauma in future situations. Even when there is no threat, your body becomes super vigilant, hyper vigilant. It sees the world through the lens of unsafety and disconnection. Yeah. So this is something, an aspect about trauma. And so I'm just seeing what else. Yeah. And this is another very important thing to know about trauma, is that it is not intentional or conscious. Yeah. Trauma doesn't work like that. So trauma is part of the autonomic nervous system, which is our involuntary nervous system. Yeah. So the autonomic nervous system is the system that regulates our heart rate. It regulates our digestion, our breathing. There's so much happening in our body, right? We don't even know. Imagine if we had to regulate. So they say that if the heart, there's something called as a vagal brake. If the heart does not have the vagal brake, the heart would beat at 100 beats per, and it can completely debilitate us. So there's something which even keeps the heartbeat very regulated. That entire thing is part of the autonomic nervous system. Like our breath goes in and out. So when trauma happens, this entire regulation, the way the digestion happens, at the certain time you feel hungry, the food gets digested, the food gets eliminated, so all this process, how the liver processes, the gallbladder. So this entire mechanism, there's a very autonomic mechanism, involuntary mechanism in the body that is happening, that is running. So when there is trauma in the body, it is part of the autonomic nervous system. And this is what it affects, it impacts this. So the autonomic nervous system is what is responsible for homeostasis. And what is homeostasis? Homeostasis is, you wake up, or you see the sun, you look out into the world and you feel moved. And when there is excitement, you can feel excited and then you can calm down. This movement. So the body is in the state of it's like a car which has its brake pedal and accelerator working really well. So you can have fun driving the car. Imagine if your brake pedal doesn't work and you're driving the car. It is traumatic. It is so scary. Yeah. Or you just have the brake. You cannot accelerate. You're so afraid of accelerating. Your legs are forever on the brake. Imagine that drive. It is so jolting to the system. But imagine when your brakes are smooth, yeah, they're working very well, your accelerator is working very well, and you can drive the car. And you can look at as you're driving the world, you can have a conversation, you're present, you are enjoying the ride, you're enjoying what's around you, you have the option of taking the exit, stopping the car. That, that when you can do it that way, that is called, when the body moves like that, integrated body, mind, emotion system moves together, yeah, then it is in homeostasis. But when there is trauma in our nervous system, then everything might feel like too much, too fast, too soon. Yeah, I need time. I cannot. It's too much. And one of the things that happens when trauma is activated or aroused in our nervous system, our thinking ability, our cognitions. I will talk about that in another video, but just want to make it clear to you that our cognition, our prefrontal cortex or our frontal cortex completely goes offline. We do not have access to it. We do not have access to this part of our brain, which is what is connected to experiencing presence, safety, connection with another person. So, so we see this around us, right? We might ourselves be in situations like that we want it to be some other way, but we just cannot be with that person or with that group of people or in a certain situation in our life. You plan in your home. Yeah, I know this, of course. I understand it in here. I'm going to say this, I'm going to respond this way. And you enter, you go there. And suddenly you just can't. You are like, what's going on? You might even feel like your ability to see, look around, that gets compromised. There's tunnel vision. Your peripheral vision is kind of compromised. So there's so many things. And I'm saying this as I have myself been discovering my own movements. And when I'm unable to access the full potentiality of my own body, my cognition, though I know it, that is where I have discovered my own trauma. Yeah. And so this is what you have to understand, that trauma is not an event. Trauma is not something that happened to you, but that which is happening in you right now, in your body and your feelings. Yeah. Because of something happened to you. Yeah. And trauma healing is most effective in the presence of an empathetic listener, because that is what the absence of an empathetic witness is what actually causes trauma. Yeah. And trauma. So what does trauma do? What are the kinds of trauma? And all that is what I wanted to make short snippets of videos and talk to you about it. But right now, I'm sure you might begin to have an idea of what is trauma. And why is it important to know trauma? Understand is that because what we do is we try to say, okay, calm down, you're a great person, you are happy, all these positive verbal psychology phrases and sentences, they don't work when trauma is activated, because it's a completely different system that is part of the trauma. Even in the autonomic nervous system, the trauma is actually part of the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is something to really understand, that when someone's trauma is there, it is best to just be there with them, acknowledge them and agree, or, just be there. Because in that moment, they cannot listen. They might not even see you. Their entire worldview has been compromised already because of a lens that is of the past. So they do not have. So this is so important for people in decision making to know this, policy making to know this, cops to know about this, in every doctors to know about trauma when they see, and to detect and to recognize that, and how do you calm the person? Because when trauma is activated and you're in an activated trauma state, nothing works. Even medicines don't work, is what I have also seen, And so first, to address the trauma is so important, because trauma affects all these, in autoimmune diseases, so many things, like Dr. Gabor Mate's work is about that diseases is not just physiological, it is psychosomatic. Yeah. And endocrinal. I mean, there's so many things which get affected because of trauma. So it is so important to understand trauma. And I hope that this short video, 15-minute video, gives you a little clarity on recognizing trauma in your own system and in the system of another person, yeah, in our society. So more in another day. So this is, let's take little chunks, sit with it, process it, and then go to the next step. So blessed be.